And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Familiar Tales. Now this is from Jerry Hawthorne. It is a story crafting game, and in this game you are playing the role of some wizard familiars, and you're doing so by playing a story game that's basically it's tactical combat, deck building, where you have your own deck of cards, but you're using an app with voice acting, and they've done this sort of story game before. Forgotten Waters, a pirate game, fantastic game, I really like that one. And Jerry Hawthorne's also very well known for making all sorts of games, Mice and Mystics and stuff like that. So this is kind of a combo of that. A cutesy, not super cute, but a cutesy fantasy world mixed with good voice acting, a story that you will affect on how it happens by the decisions you make over the course of this game. And it's cooperative working together. I'm not going to show you every rule here, but let me give you a little bit of an overview so you can see a bit about how the game works. Besides the board game, you're going to need two things. You're going to need a campaign journal. Well, this comes with the board game, but this is going to keep track of what you do. You'll start, there are 3 eras, and each era has kind of different possibilities of where you might go, and these are numbers that you will use to put into this app. And then you need some sort of device that hooks up to the internet. There's not an actual downloaded app available yet. It says downloads for Windows or Mac coming soon. You just need to have a browser to go to. So you'll start a new game, or you can continue a game, and once you go there, you can load the music or stream the music. So I might just stream the music here, and then we'll pick a name for the game here, and so we'll call this game here, we'll call it Haha, because that's the game we're going to play. And then it talks about a setup guide. Have you built everything? Yes, I have. Do you want the app to help you set up your campaign? Now, I don't want to do that right now because I just want to show you the app. But I'll tell you what, it does a good job at showing you how to set up the campaign. So once you have the campaign set up, you're just going to put in the number here, which is 101, and this is going to start the story. Now the story can be read, but you can also play it. And
the countryside, as did the dark rain clouds that traversed the sky. The land was hilly and green, and mostly uninhabited.
So this is just a little bit so that you can hear kind of the music and the dialogue
Lightning crashed
and sound effects.
as the sound of frantic pounding came from outside the cottage door. Old Louise called out,
Hold on! Goodness me!
And you can turn off the music if you find that to be annoying,
the old wizard
and just listen to the dialogue by itself. Now, I'm not going to show you much more than that because I don't want to spoil it. But as the game goes by, you're going to be going through various things and events, and they're going to be in locations, and they're in this book here. This is the location book, and you will have all the familiars. You're going to play with all 4 familiars, no matter how many players are playing the game. In this case, you're carrying a baby with you, who, as the game goes by, will progress into a girl and then a young woman. And you'll see that their bad guys will show up. This will tell you what bad guys will happen. The campaign is going to tell you all this sort of stuff also. Like, for example, at the beginning, you talk to this guy. You have a chance to ask some questions. So I'm like, oh, I'll ask a few questions here. And I ask him this question. And then suddenly, he doesn't answer any more questions. And then we go through, and the app will teach you how to play if you don't want to. Otherwise, you go to the page, like I have here, and then you have the app, but the app is a little bit secondary at this point because now you're going to be taking actions and turns with your characters. There are 4 familiars in the game: the giant chalk golem, stone golem, who with a bird, Flicker, Gribbert, and Blaze. Each of these characters comes with 2 dials here. You have power, which you'll use to upgrade things, and then you have your hit points. Here, Gribbert starts with 6 life points. They also have a special action. Gribbert can spend 5 power to banish a card from his hand or discard pile. In this game, each player starts with their own deck. This is Gribbert's deck here. You'll shuffle it, and on your turn, you have 5 cards that you will be using to take your turn. You also might have some equipment. Here, Gribbert starts with a lashing tongue that they'll be able to use when they do things. On your turn, you can do as many actions as you want, as long as you have cards to be able to do them. Most of the actions are going to be using the stats on the side, although if you have an action that says something here, you can do this, ignoring everything else. You can use a card for movement at the bottom, and when you move, it's pretty simple. You can just cross dotted lines. So you see it as a double solid line. I can't move through that, although like the fairy can move through a single solid line because she can fly. So if I moved here, I would cross 1 dotted line. Moving here would cross another dotted line. That would be 2 movement. To cross this double dotted line would cost 2 movement. Also, when you're on certain locations, there are numbers there. When you do that, you just type that number into the app and see what happens. Sometimes there's a resource. You can try to gather that resource. Sometimes there's enemies. You'll want to fight them. And sometimes it will require you to make other tests in this game. Whenever you make a test, whether it's combat or anything else, you're going to be playing cards trying to reach a certain number with whichever one of these skill sets it uses. And there are different skill sets in the game. For example, you only need a few of these bottom ones to forage to get a resource, and there are many different resources that players can get. But when you're doing combat, depending on whether it's ranged or hand-to-hand, you might need more to hit that person, and that's all based on the stats of that character. So for example, in this first one, you're fighting a couple unsavories, so you'll see you'll need 5 to hit them. So if I want to attack them, I have to be in the same location, and I'll play a bunch of cards from my hand. If any card has this chain icon in the top corner, like this assist does, other players can help play cards for you. And you're also going to be rolling this die, which can add or subtract 1 or 2, or it can give you power, or many times it will cause the danger to increase. Danger is on the app. You'll be increasing danger or sometimes decreasing danger depending on what happens, and the more danger goes up, different things will happen in the scenario. The bad guys will take their turn when they feel like it. You'll be following a turn, like right now, for example, it tells me that it is the fox's turn to go. When I'm done, I would end my turn. And then danger happens because danger is so high here. It's at a 4 something. Then it asks me about my discontent, and I might say no. And then it will tell me to move discontent up. If there's enemies in play, it tells me exactly how to move and go with those enemies. So I want to try to take these enemies out if possible, and I also want to accomplish the objective of the mission. In this case, we're just trying to run across the field here and escape. Now, there's going to be fighting. When you fight, you'll be attacking the enemies. They have life tracks here. Once they're out, they're gone off the board, but more enemies might show up. They can attack you and cause you to lose damage. If a character dies, then they'll come back to life, but misfortune will go up. Misfortune's a track over here, which you really don't want to go up because it's going to affect the story. You don't lose per se in this game, but as you go from spot to spot, misfortune is almost like a negative score. And while I haven't seen it have a major course, I haven't finished the whole campaign, I'm assuming at the end of the campaign, we'll deal a lot where misfortune is. You're at the beginning of the game, you're carrying around a baby, and then you also have a girl and a young woman later on, and their discontent will be going up. So you can do different things to make this discontent go down. When you're carrying the baby, for example, the baby might start crying, which might attract more enemies. Also, players can use their power to buy more cards to put into their deck so that they have better cards when they're drawing from it. And they can use those resources they've been gathering to build better equipment and weapons that they can use. Sometimes players will be taking fatigue. Fatigue cards will be placed into your deck, and they got not very good stats. You use them, but when you use them, it's going to increase the danger by 1. That's what this means up here. And in fact, many of the cards in your deck, when you play them, are going to give you special abilities or have things happen based on when you play them. Sometimes, like for example, rest, when you play this card, that exclamation point says you immediately heal 1 life. Other cards say that if you're doing a test with this one, this symbol will happen. And you will often look at your little cards that you have to see if those symbols activate something on that card. Some cards even let you re-roll the dice when you're taking an action. That's basically all I can tell you without spoilers. Just others saying you're going to find all sorts of locations and things happening over the course of the game. And the book is pretty long. There is 79 pages in this book. You likely won't see them all. You might play a very different scenario on one page than somebody else will. You're just going to follow the app and do what it says. There's not as many components in this game as you might think. Now, there's a decent amount of miniatures, and you'll notice these miniatures, sometimes you'll have the same miniature, but they'll have different bases on them so that you can tell different, the same creature. Like, for example, these creatures are the same here, but one has a square base and one has a pentagon base. So that's to tell them apart. I'm sure they would look better painted, and maybe we'll get them painted. There's a little container that comes you put together that keeps your tokens in. Pretty unnecessary, frankly, but it looks nice. And then players each have their own tuck box, and you can keep everything in that tuck box, and that's good because in Era 2 and Era 3, more cards come in the game, you'll be getting more cards. So I do want to be clear that in this game, you will get, when you start playing through it, as far as I can tell, only one person is going to play through it at a time. Like when me and my children stopped playing it, I had to reset it to show you all here how to do it because your decks are going to change and morph. But again, you can keep track of a lot of that stuff on your era. And all sorts of things can happen. You have your own progressions that might happen. There are specific cards you can get. When you play them, you'll cross off the next number, which will follow your familiar. When you play multiple familiars, you actually play with one deck. You combine the cards and take some out, and the rules are pretty clear on that. By the way, really like the tutorial. Very nice, easy to understand. I was very happy with that. The rule book is fine. I think they should have made cards with this here so that every player could look at that, and even because this is needed all the time, and as Affliction's a reference card, I think would have been nice. But that's my only negative. Now, when I played the app, I think they said it was 40% done voice work. Almost everything I saw voice work worked well. All the different pressing the buttons and stuff worked well. So far I think it's great. I think the voice acting is tremendous. I like the art, everything component-wise. I mean, it's Plaid Hat. They do a good job on that. Now, I don't know that this is going to replace Forgotten Waters. Forgotten Waters is just one of my favorite games. I really love the pirate theme. I love the worker placement aspect of it. This is a very different game than that. But there's some similarities between them. The voice acting, I guess you could play this by just reading it, not listening to the voice acting. But why would you do that? It's really well done. Now, there were moments in this particular game where it felt a little, almost too cutesy boopsy for me. My kids thought it was funny, and we enjoyed that together, but I was kind of like, all right, fine. I rolled my eyes at some of it, but I also liked it. I thought they picked these 4 familiars. Not only do they have distinct personalities, and I've read through a lot of the campaign. After we stopped playing, we played. It's a pretty lengthy thing. It offers you save points consistently, so don't worry about that. But I mean, it feels like it's 25 plus hours worth of game in here for sure, at least. I read through a lot of it, and I like where the story goes. I like the decisions that you make over the course of this game, and there is some pretty strong moments, some strong story beats that are in here. So that's mixed in. The game itself is a deck building game. There are many deck building games out there where you build a deck of cards, you use these cards to take actions. You have this hand of 5 cards. You're going to decide how many of those you use. If you use cards to help other people, you don't draw back up to the end of your turn. So you have to decide Am I going to help other? I mean, you do want to help other people, but there's a little bit of stuff that you have to be careful. Even if you defend against creatures, you play the cards for defensive purposes. There's a lot of decisions there, and so as the game goes by, you want to buy cards that make it better. You want to get weapons that make you better. But you're also really invested in the story. So it's kind of like the tactical part. If you just like the story, you might be thrown off by some of the combat, because the combat is important in the game. Not everything's done in a combat way. There are ways to avoid combat. But there is combat for sure. And if you like the combat, you might kind of sometimes find yourself fast-forwarding through the story. But if you like the combination, and if you've liked Jerry's previous games, you probably do, this is going to be a big winner for you. Like if your kids grew up playing Mice and Mystics, this is the next game. It's a different universe, but this is the next game. This is going to appease the same people who like that game, I think. And so, I'm talking about playing this. We have not played through the whole thing. We played a lot of it, several hours worth going through. We had a very enjoyable time with it. It's solid, it's interesting. I want to see more of this universe. And I think Plaid Hat, once again, shows that they're pushing the edge both technologically, but also story-wise, and also just making fun games. Jerry Hawthorne has this niche that he's doing really well at, and this is on that list. So that's Familiar Tales. I'm Tom Vasel. You're watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment approved.